Hey, it's Bill in Virginia. And this video, it's going to be on the HO scale. And I'm in a backdrop phase, I guess. Not going to go into all of the details. The construction is the same as what they were for the N scale. It's 1-inch thick pink foam board using a 1-inch filler strip, a little bit of a different construction, just slightly different from the N scale because I built the HO scale table slightly different. But I'm going to kind of show some snippets as I go through this. I'm trying to do something different. As you have seen how I've built the HO scale, I've made it so that there's some ways of doing some different things. I'm going to try to do that on the backdrops as well. I think you'll see here as we get a little bit farther into the video. Got to figure out how I want to do one. I made mention in a previous video on the N scale side that I got my flats. So combination, I ordered 2 batches, an N scale and an HO scale batch of building flats. So what I'm thinking to do is to put my first one on the opposite side of the HO scale layout from what you can see here. When I'm doing switching and on this particular 4x8 piece, more often than not I'm standing on this side because this is where the action is. This is where I've got most of the switching. So I'm thinking I'm going to put the backdrop on the other side for that one. And then the second backdrop, I'm thinking probably put on this side on this section for the HO scale, because I'm doing most of my switching and work over on the other side on that one. So I'm going to see how it's going to go. But thinking these will be some good ones to start. An N scale in the background, forced perspective. This is going to be where the little stream comes across that's on that side of the layout. The rest of it is pretty flat until I get down to about this area, because this is where the coaling yard picks up on this side. So I might do a little changing in here. I'd like to have a scrap metal junkyard near where a coaling area is. I've seen that. That'd be a pretty good industry to kind of put in that area. But again, N scale buildings, kind of forced perspective in the background. Foreground would be, some sort of road, street system. I'll figure out how I'm going to do it, as well as trees and fencing and other things to kind of pull the eye to different areas. And with the base of the layout, this would be about layout level, right about here, given that I've got 2.5-inch strip wood for the frame, and then about up another 3/4 of an inch for the foam board that I've got the base on. So actually all these buildings will get pushed up a little bit. Paint everything blue in the background. I will probably put in a little bit of hills and trees because, again, I'm modeling Pennsylvania Railroad and the Appalachians, fictional places, and often in cities. They're down more in the valleys, and then you're seeing ridge lines in the distance just about in any city that you're in. So I'll kind of put that in along with the trees and other brush, but in the background. Foreground, I'm probably just going to paint it a flat white. That way I can do details in there and add trees, scenery. I'm going to look to see if I got enough room where I might even be able to add a dummy track in front of these warehouses, or at least model one that will overhang slightly and actually maybe hide the seam as I get going on this. But more to come. That's the idea for right now. We'll see how this one materializes. And doing the same painting as I did on the N scale for the backdrop. The paint covers really well, blends in nice, and when it dries it should look pretty good. One thing you'll notice on these that's different from the N scale is I did not use bolts at the bottom to hold the trim strips on. I actually used the foam board adhesive. Got good adhesion onto it. These backdrops are not as thick, again, just the way the bench work was done on the HO scale, so I can get by with less. But painting's coming along pretty good. Here's the reason why I can get by with less on the HO scale. On the N scale, the backdrop would come up. I would gain that inch and up so that I had to add filler strips and fill it out. Here the plastic strip can abut directly to this with the upright for the backdrop. And then here with that 1/4 inch trim piece, I have a 1 inch by 1 inch section that fills this gap. So I actually get a much narrower profile than what I end up with on the end scale, which is essentially 2 pieces of 1 inch foam, and then the trim pieces, hence the mechanical support to make sure they tie together even though the foam board is glued. So that saves me a little bit of material for the HO scale. You can also notice did the exact same thing for shelf support, just a little 5 inch bump out that comes out about a 1/2 inch. I put 2 on each of the 4x8 sections. Again, a little different than what I did on the end scale. The end scale I did 1 per roughly 7 foot or 7.5 foot section. Just a little bit longer, a little bit easier for clamping, and just again what I've got underneath the layout, it just seems to work better. So basic painting on the HO backdrops is completed. I got the sky in, kind of whiter down at the bottom. Going to be the exact same thing like on the end scale. I'm going to paint in some background, but on these I'm going to do a lot more with building flats. So you can kind of see what it looked like prior from the back, but then if I come down, get that look at the sky. So I think it's going to work out pretty well. Where I've got trees, I'm going to add trees into the background, make it continue. These open areas, building flats for a lot of it. Coming across over behind the station, same thing. Where I've got trees, there's going to be more trees. Where I've got the coal yard, that's probably where I'm going to try to work in the scrap yard from what you've seen in an earlier clip. Now, one thing to note is that with the extruded foam board, it does have a good side and it does have a side that is not so good. So on this particular one, you can see the horizontal lines going through it. Now the bottom one, I don't care. All of that's going to be covered by scenery of one type or another. The middle one is barely visible, don't really care about that one. Top one does stand out. So what I'm probably going to do by the time I get done is I'm going to make that look like a jet contrail. So, early 1950s, we had some jets flying, or high altitude aircraft that leaves some trails. So I'm going to kind of paint that in just to kind of camouflage that. But I'm going to take you around and show you what's different about these particular backdrops compared to what I did for the end scale. So the end scale backdrops off in the distance, those two I think I'm just going to leave. They're made for that side of the layout. I like it. The more I look at it and the more I run the railroad, the less likely I am to build anything for the front side. Maybe one later, but nothing for a while. So coming back over, here's the HO backdrop. Same thing. I've got that inch space to kind of play with. My tracks are not as close to the edge as they are on the end scale, so I can actually do some stuff there. But what I've done to make this one a little bit unique is they're going to be reversible. So the back side of the backdrop, this will go on the other side of the layout. So what I've got here is the carving out for where I've got the trees and the Boy Scouts over in that corner. So this piece can go onto the other 4x8. This next piece, which is cut out down on this end, this one goes by where the retaining wall is over by the fuel oil facility. I had some damage on that foam board when I got it, when I built the HO scale, so I made a little retaining wall and like a little cut that was kind of going down there. So these have already been put into place, and I painted both sides of them so that they are both ready for scenery. just like I did on the N scale. You know, I've got the 1-inch foam board where I can stick trees in. I can glue on. I can add base cover to kind of blend and hide seams. But I figured for the price of 2, I can actually get 4. So these are super light, easily lift them with one hand, although 2 is preferred just because they're 8 foot long to balance them. So depending upon where I'm at on the layout and where I want to do video work or take pictures, I can flip one for the other, easily take them off because I've got just 2 quick clamps that hold them on into position, and I can move it over and I'm ready to go. So I'm going to have fun. I'm going to be playing with this off and on for quite a while. I'll get the scenery piece in probably fairly quick. That's something that I enjoy doing. Getting the building flats in, I'm actually going to be looking at some stuff on YouTube and checking out some other modelers' work, just so that I can get something that is reasonably detailed, looks reasonably good, so that I can add factories in a lot of these open spaces. You know, there'll be a lot of buildings that are going to kind of come in just to kind of fill up the space, to make it look like I'm in an industrial area, and then to kind of look off into horizons and going on to different areas here. And actually that turned out fairly good. I kind of did it intentionally to kind of make it look a little darker, like a little cloud in the distance. So that's pretty good. I like that. But I'll be painting clouds and doing other details on this at some point into the future. So that's kind of where I'm at on this one for now. Just one more day and then I go back to work. And in the process of flipping them around. It only takes, from the time that I took it off there to the time I put it on here, a minute. So I will get the other one put on, a couple of clamps, and I'm good to go. Same thing on this side. So I'll run a couple of trains once I get this one in position. And another minute. And backdrop is now on the opposite side of the layout. So I think this is going to work out pretty good once I get everything set and put in like I'm thinking. So I'm going to run a little bit more in the way of trains and call it good for this video. I'm going to have fun on Sunday, which is tomorrow, just running the layout, both the HO and the N scale. And that'll probably be what the next video is, just having some fun, letting trains run.